Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for that. How's your day going there?
It's not too bad. It's going well.
That photo behind you looks a little familiar there.
It's always somebody chasing me.
I find there's two schools of thought when it comes to somebody who's really notable and famous and internationally renowned. One is that the person has photos of their whole life around the house. And the other one is you would never know that a notable person ever lives there. They have nothing to do with their career. Are you the first one you have like your whole life around the house?
Yeah, I pretty much, I have no photos of what I did in my previous career hanging anywhere. You wouldn't know me if you did, unless you knew me.
Now I know. Well, it's so wonderful to connect because I like your story. Most people would go, I had this amazing career in sports. I'm going to spend the rest of my life talking about it. In your case, there's Golden. You said, hey, I'm going to have a new career that has nothing to do with my old career. Did the idea of Golden in any form come about during your playing career?
No, it didn't, but it's formed through just kind of what I'm all about. And that's giving back. That's about how do I have a touch point with community and also culture. And I know that I try and really weave that into the fabric of everything I do in business. And so Golden was a perfect fit. Male grooming products and personal care products is a great way for me to give back to a lot of the youth that I impact and that I speak with. And we're looking to extend that because it's not just about our young men, it's about our young women as well.
When I interview musicians, comedians, actors, it's very easy to ask who your influences are because, they had to hear a song before they started writing songs. In your case, who are your influences as an entrepreneur? Because Golden is not your only company and it's not your only success after football.
I think I come from a family full of entrepreneurs. My mother, I would have to say, is the first one. I remember we grew up in a housing projects, and to make ends meet, she would make these little additional snacks like little bags of popcorn, and she'd buy this extra candy at the store. So she brought the convenience to, if you want to call it, our neighborhood, so people could just come to our home and buy things and then leave out. It was probably illegal at that time, but for the most part, it wasn't like she was making a ton of money doing that. But that's where the entrepreneurial spirit came from. And it just extended throughout my career. I've always been very interested in business and being around the enterprise and the entertainment level of the NFL. That itch never leaves you, even though you're done playing.
That's a really good point. As somebody, even when I have a full-time job, I always do freelance things, pick up little gigs on the side. It's not just fear of, work going away. It's, I like to stay active. In your case, was the plan when you were playing football to have a plan B as an entrepreneur after football? Were you even thinking about the future when you were at your height in the NFL?
I would say after leaving the University of Virginia and going right into football, it was really focused on football. But what I learned is that football in the NFL is a business. While it's a profession, it's very much so a business. So there's a lot of things you have to learn there. And that just naturally sparked my interest in learning about contracts, starting to learn about branding. And, social media wasn't around at the level it is today, but we had to be very conscious of how do you build value and equity in your brand. And I started to look at that, and I followed how the teams in the NFL protected theirs. And I saw that there was a way for me to monetize that post-career. And then also, how do you leverage that in business? And by doing the community work, you start to build really customers who start to like your brand. And it was just trying to find out what is the brand that I want to be, what types of services or products that I want to get into. And I went through quite a few different things, from franchising to just my own personal products and stuff like that, but then settled in on just really looking at it at an enterprise level and really starting to put it all together on how does it all work together as one.
That was actually going to be my next question. Most people who you speak to who find success as an entrepreneur, the first, second, third, maybe even the fourth thing, they don't stick. They're not eager to say, hey, this stuff failed. But being an entrepreneur is almost like baseball, where if you have a 333 batting average, you're pretty amazing that 1 in 3 times you get a hit that you come to the plate. So in your case, you start off with franchising. Was that food-oriented stuff at the beginning?
It was actually a combination. It started out with a small thing. People know it now as the UPS store, but it started out as mailbox, etc.
Yeah.
And it was one of the fastest growing franchises. And it was considered one of the better franchises to start in if you were looking to get into that industry. So I started there with a store. I went well, and I ran that for a few years, and I actually sold it to another up and coming entrepreneur person. I got into food franchising. Many of you may remember Cinnabon. So I owned all the Cinnabons in Michigan, and I owned all the Cinnabons later in Florida. So I'd gotten up to about 20, 30 units at one point. So if you were eating any of those and you put on the extra calories, it was because of the stores that I had. Did that for about 6 years, and then ultimately got into software development, which was really about the analytics, because coming from the sports world, I was very intrigued by that and video and all these things, and started doing that for the next few years, trying to find my way. But not every business worked. And that's the thing that gets lost sometimes when you talk to people in business. They want to talk about the high points, but there were things that I did that didn't quite work out the way I wanted. And I had to learn from those. Some of those financially were hard to swallow. Sure. And then others were able to give me the opportunity to figure out where do I go from there. And getting into this particular business, I saw it as being a great opportunity with manufacturing and contract manufacturing. Mm-hmm. Became a great thing. Golden Grooming was a great place to start because it already had an audience. It also started to understand that market. But outside of that, it's just building other businesses around it, because now you need labeling, you need products, you need to have the actual packaging that goes with it. Now branding and messaging and creative technology. So I ended up acquiring a lot of companies like that, or either just building those myself with relationships. And that's how we've come to get Team 84, which owns several of those different brands.
Sounds like you have a great team with you and that you're able to delegate.
Yeah, I do. And that's hence the reason why we call our company Team 84. And I want to make sure I had that aspect. That's kind of been the foundation of who I am as a person. I've played team sports since I was age 6. The life skills and the values that it's taught me along the way has allowed me to just really transition those right into everything that I do, and realize that to scale, I have to be bigger than one. And understanding how do you leverage partnerships, but also how do you do it in a very healthy way. A lot of times you can overextend, or you could become the weak link, and it just doesn't provide for a good business relationship. And then also having a team of people, just like I did when I played, you got a position, and everyone has to be accountable for their position, and they take ownership of that. So I'll still play wide receiver and salesman in our part of the business and innovator. And then we have others that quarterback, and others who play GM and all those things. So it's really no hierarchy just because I'm the owner. It's just a matter of a team that's put together to do what's necessary to be successful.
So many of the top skincare companies are e-commerce based. Were you hesitant at the beginning to become a tech person, or you were an early adapters of computers in general?
I've been in computers since, gosh, if you want to still call them computers back then, but no, I since 2008, I've been really deep into it, and everything from building our own software to our own computer systems, and by piece. But having a business partner also in Golden that understands that piece. They bring the strength of e-commerce and understanding the growth there, understanding how do we target and retarget without being offensive. How do we do messaging, and how do we participate in social media, but also how do we give a value prop back to our customers? Sure. To let them know that this money well spent on something that everyone is pretty much using at some point in terms of their hygiene or their personal care products. But e-commerce is a big thing. If you're not in it as a business, I think you miss an audience that is there. And then given definitely what's happened with the pandemic and things, the way life is never going to go back to being the same, it's an element that you have to start to incorporate if your business allows for that.
Do you have a favorite of the Golden products, putting you on the spot?
Yeah, I love the solid cologne. That's one of my favorite, because you lose so much when you use a spray. This was just genius to see that our product goes a lot further, because it's a rub-on, and you just basically being a solid cologne, you don't have any waste with that as you do with the aerosol. I would say the second one to that, as a close second, is the body balm. I'm being an African-American man. I get cold. I'm in Michigan, and being able to really just work with shaft skin and work with making sure I don't have the dryness sometimes. It's been wonderful. That's probably a very close second in terms of my favorite 2 products. And if I decide to grow a real big beard, then when I had my beard at one point, the beard oil was great, but I now use it on my goatee. But it's really good products, really good people, really good formula team that's there, our scientists and everyone who's putting it together. And just, you can't do it without everyone that's there.
This is just my opinion. You don't have to agree, but I've spent maybe a total of 24 hours in my life in Michigan. I hope to spend more time in the future there. But has any state given the world more contributions culturally, business-wise, et cetera, than Michigan? Because at first you go, oh, yeah, Michigan, it's the middle of the country. And then you go, okay, Motown, okay, cars, okay. You think of all the comedians and the musicians and everything. Is there any state that comes close to Michigan?
If I were a traveler of a lot of different states, I would then just say I could probably give hands down Michigan. But I will say this, of the ones I have traveled, which is more than half of the country, Michigan is very diverse. It's very diverse in its culture, its people. It's very diverse in its commodities. It's diverse in just a lot of what it's all about. And you mentioned the automotive, which is a big component, but now we brought tech to this part. Yeah, manufacturing is here as well. We have a huge entrepreneurial community, but we also have a very diverse community that brings and makes it a very rich culture. So it's not just when you go to a rural, or you go to just an urban, or you go to just a suburban, more focused communities. These are widespread, but they're very much commingled as well.
Have you ever seen the TV show Detroiters?
You know what? I have not, but someone had told me that I need to check that out. We've seen a lot of movies that came through here, especially when the film industry came in. Yeah. I have not seen Detroiters, but I see Detroiters all the time. Every day. So I get the reality one every time. So there you go.
Well played. Well, 3 quick questions about you, and then you're free from this interview. And the first one is, you are very busy because there's all these different businesses going on under the Team 84 umbrella. But when you're not busy, where does your free time usually go?
It goes into content creation. So my latest and greatest hobby has been really getting into film. We built a studio inside of our office so that I wouldn't have to walk far, which is great. And we just want to do a lot with just creative. I just want to challenge things that are out there. I want to be very authentic. I want to be very genuine in what I do. And, everyone's telling me to make sure I take baby steps, because you don't want to just boom, hit people all of a sudden because they've seen you in one light. But, I'm a human just like anyone else. And I have another side to me. So there's a piece that we want to do that takes you a little bit beyond what I've done. So that's kind of what's in, kind of consuming some of my time now.
Next question. Do you have a TV recommendation you could pass on to somebody who needs a new show to start, being that, hey, there's now a film studio in your office?
Oh, wow. You know what? Not really, because I would be bad at it, because anything I give, it seems like they discontinue the series, like the next season. So I don't want to really jinx anyone out there. I'm really into like the first 48. I have to admit, that is like one of my favorites. It's not that I like crime, but it's just something about just the format of it and the way it's gone, and just the fact that it will continue forever unless we get rid of crime.
Well said. And the last question, anytime I speak to an NFL alumni, I like to figure out if they've ever tried DDPY, DDP Yoga, the Diamond Dallas Page, the wrestlers yoga company. I know that if you're a member of NFL alumni, they give that to you as part of that. I was just curious if you had any experience with it.
Hey, you know what? DDP and I have gotten to become, good friends. He's a guy that I would go down to his home and actually travel to go do his yoga, and then be fed right after we were done, be able to get all cleaned back up when you're in his home. But great guy. So yeah, DDP yoga, I've tried it, and it is a lot more difficult than it appears. And to just have Dallas Diamond Page doing that is amazing. But yeah, it's a good thing. I haven't done it but a few times, but it was one of the more focused workouts I've ever done.
And he has an elevator in his home. That's pretty cool, right?
He doesn't need it. This guy's in great shape, and just walking up and down. But I think it's just the luxury of it. But great person, and great system that he has.
Totally. Well, such a pleasure to connect with you. So wonderful to hear all these different things that you have going on at the same time. There's a team behind you. You stuck with Detroit, etc. So keep up all the greatness there, Herman.
Man, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Paltrocast.